If you can laugh about this market crash, you know you're in like a good spot mentally and you're not overexposed and all that kind of stuff. And this current crash, I wasn't laughing.
Hello, good morning, GM. Welcome back, everyone, to Overpriced JPEGs. I'm Carly Riley, and it is time for another segment of Moment of Zeneca with Zeneca33. Thank you, Zeneca, as always, for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always good.
And it's funny, I feel like I've been calling these a segment, but if we're being honest, this is about to just be the episode. Yeah. This is now a Moment of Zeneca episode.
So much to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So I really did think at the start of this endeavor that it'd be like, oh, a segment, and then I go on and continue to do the rest of my thing. But that's not how it works.
Everyone is talking about the metaverse these days, and we're all still trying to figure out what it actually is, because everyone is looking for how to get exposure to it. That is why a metaverse index fund is so important, because in such a young market, an index can give you broad exposure to all the various players who are building out all these digital worlds that will ultimately become the metaverse. And that's why you should check out the Metaverse Index from the Index Co-op. The Metaverse Index gives you simple, easy, and safe one-click exposure to the emerging open metaverse trend. The MVI Index contains some of the biggest metaverse projects out there, including AXIE Infinity, Decentraland, Illuvium, and more. So join thousands of holders who have already trusted nearly $50 million to the MVI Index. And if you buy $500 of MVI on the Dharma app, you can receive $50 worth of ETH on the Polygon network. There's a link in the show notes for you to click so you can get started on your journey into the metaverse. AXIE Infinity is a game universe filled with cute, fascinating little creatures called AXIEs that players can collect as pets. Players aim to battle, breed, collect, raise, and build kingdoms for their AXIEs. There are and will be many varied gaming experiences for AXIEs, many of them having players compete with each other using complex strategies and tactics to attain top rankings or be rewarded with coveted resources. Others will have them complete quests, defeat bosses, and unlock in-depth storylines. There are countless unique AXIEs that players can collect with varying body parts and experiences. The AXIE universe is a player-owned economy where the players can truly own, buy, sell, and trade the resources they earn in the game through skilled gameplay and contributions to the ecosystem. It's a digital nation where people come together globally with their AXIEs to play, earn, and live. Join the AXIE revolution at axieinfinity.com/bankless.
So, okay, let's just start as we usually do here. Would love to get your, macro update, micro updates, what's happening in the space, what's been going on over the last 2 weeks, projects that are succeeding, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that the NFT market is still very bullish. A lot of projects have been pumping. We saw a bit of the brakes went on a little bit when ETH really tanked, and that sort of like spooked everyone, I think, for a few days, that people weren't sure. All of a sudden their investments that, in their head priced in USD or fiat just tanked a bunch. And I think a lot of people had like big bags and were like watching them evaporate in front of their eyes and like panicking, like, hey, should I sell my NFTs and just convert ETH to fiat before it drops? What if it gets down to like 1K or 500? What if this is a massive bear? And there was a bit of panic. But then sort of ETH kind of stabilized. It's been around the 2,400 mark for a few days. And that sort of calmed the market, I think. People are like happy to continue to go ham on NFTs. It's made it, a low ETH price. I mean, people always say, is there a correlation, or is the NFT market and the macro crypto market, like, is it correlated or is it like decoupled? And I think it's still somewhat correlated, especially when you look at it from the respect of new entrants, new participants, because by and large, they price things in USD. So if someone's been sitting on the sidelines and looking at whatever NFT project that was relatively like low end, say 0.1, 0.2 ETH in the past to get in, like it was, all right, $400, $500, $1,000. All of a sudden now it's like $200, $300. They're like, oh, okay, I can justify and afford that. So I think people are getting into more projects like that. And then there's just more money entering the ecosystem and more ETH entering the ecosystem. And it's really pumping everything. Like blue chips are really having a great time. Bored Ape Yacht Club is almost at 100 ETH floor. Mutants are almost at 20. Punks had a resurgence. Cool Cats are at almost 15. World of Women is at almost 10. It's just like so many projects are pumping. And then we've had some new projects come out that are also doing really well. I think Azuki is the number one example of, it's relatively new, maybe 10 days old or something. And it had a Dutch auction, which started and ended at 1 ETH. It sold out very, very quickly. And the floor is now, I think it's like 8 or something. 8.4, which
it's
is
like 7.5
really
when I last checked, but now it's 8.4. All right. Well, and I want to dive into Azuki. I want to ask you, not to put you in a position to make predictions on crypto when you're our NFT person, but where do you think do you have predictions on where the price of ETH goes, or stable,
no idea,
up, down?
honestly.
No idea. Does it impact you at all? Like, do you ever start taking profits when the price of ETH starts going down? Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have no idea if it's going to drop to 500 or go to 5K soon. It's so many factors outside of my knowledge. It does affect me. So actually, I found an interesting tweet that I wrote maybe like 6 months ago. So like, it would have been like June last year, when ETH really quickly crashed from like 4K down to 1800 or 1600 again. And at the time, I was like tweeting about laughing. I was like, hey, this is like, if you can laugh about this market crash, you're in like a good spot mentally, and you're not overexposed and all that kind of stuff. And this current crash, I wasn't laughing. I was like a little bit panicked and spooked. And it made me realize I didn't take enough profits when ETH was high, and I should have. And so I did take some profits when ETH was like 2,800 and 3,300, 2,800, and then again to 2,400. Just because I realized, if this is a massive bear and ETH tanks to $400 or something catastrophic, like we see a crash similar to the 2017, 2018 crash, I'm just not going to be feeling very good. And I'd rather do that. So it affected me in that sense, and it sort of made me realize that I should have taken more profits, and I want to like implement some sort of like regular profit taking system, sort of like dollar cost averaging, but out instead of in. So like every week, every month, convert some ETH to fiat. And there are like tax reasons that I haven't been doing that so much lately, but I think I was probably overexposed in that sense, but
Well, and I think that the DCAing in reverse, that's a really interesting idea that I actually haven't heard, but it makes sense because I think you made this point, I think in your Discord, but you were like, because it could have gone the other way. Like, I'm regretting now that I didn't take more profits, but if ETH had pumped to 10K, then I would have felt stupid for taking the profits that I did at 3K. Like, nobody's going to play this perfectly. Nobody can actually realistically predict what's going to happen. And so, and yet we still beat ourselves up for that. So the DCA piece, if you DCA on the way out, it also removes that sense of I have to be perfect. Like, I dollar cost average in, I have weekly buys on various cryptos, and that's what keeps me from going crazy when there are these price fluctuations, because I'm like, cool, I'm hands off. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I'm going to keep buying, and I'm bullish in the long term, and so so whatever. That's interesting. I mean, it's a more manual process on the way out, which I think is what makes it harder.
Yeah.
Can you manually set to sell off things? I guess that's the question.
I have no idea. I would just set an alarm like in my calendar, every day. At this
but then you have to manually go in and do it. And that makes it harder because you're actually having to push that button every week to be like selling some of this.
And if it just dropped 10% that day, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So NFTs decoupled from crypto. I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of we had a little period there where the market seemed spooked, but it does seem to be really interesting. This one, more than other dips, pumps, whatever, this period of crypto moving does feel like it has been has had the least effect on NFT trading of any of them. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's a sign that the NFT market is sort of maturing more, and it's just sort of attracting new and different participants. Like there are people who are getting into crypto purely through NFTs. Like, most of last year, a lot of the people into NFTs were sort of crypto people who were branching out. Maybe they had ETH, they had Bitcoin, they had altcoins, and they were seeing NFTs and, hey, let's get involved there. Obviously, there were new participants too, but now we're seeing more and more people, and I think it's sort of the thing that a lot of people have been saying coming true, which is NFTs are what are gonna make crypto go mainstream. Like, people thought it was going to be DeFi. Turns out no one, aside from the tech and finance people, cared about that, which kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Fully.
But NFTs have art, culture, music, celebrity, everything, when freaking Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon are on the Tonight Show talking about their apes, it's like a lot of people are going to notice. When Eminem gets an ape, people are going to notice, etc.
Gwyneth Paltrow, the latest intro.
Yeah,
I actually had a friend text me. They actually texted me. It was like, "Oh no, apes are dead," and it was just like a headline being like, "Gwyneth Paltrow has an ape." It's like that's it. Apes are done now.
It's as well. That's the top signal.
Goop is when Goop's in. Yeah, exactly. You're doomed. I think that makes sense, and we're gonna talk a little later on about that. The line goes up video. One of the I don't know if anybody. I'll give a quick context here in case people haven't seen it. It's like a 2-hour, very long, clearly, I guess call it takedown of crypto and NFTs. And I think there's some really valid criticisms in there. There's also a lot that is very biased and invalid. And I think the biggest point that he made in that video that I thought was just really kind of stupid was NFTs are just a way to get people to buy crypto. That was like that was a thesis he kind of put out there. Like his whole thing seemed to be that everything that happens in this space is all just to try and get people to buy more crypto as part of this Ponzi scheme to pump up the price of crypto. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And your point of we now have people getting into crypto by way of NFTs in and of itself, I think undermines that argument. Not to speak of things like Flow or Dapper, like places where people are buying them in fiat, right? Like, so there's a lot that you can do to disprove that. But I think your point of we're in a phase of the market that's really interesting because people are actually getting into this broader world because of NFTs. I think really disproves that argument. Okay, let's talk about Azuki, which is like the project of the week. And do you have one? Did you buy in? What's your origin story with learning about Azuki?
Yeah, so my origin story, let's say a month ago or something, someone tagged me on Twitter. I think it might have been Zagabond, one of the founders of it. And I think he said, let's do something together, let's do a Twitter Spaces. And then I had never heard of him or the project prior to that. And then I probably had like 50 people in my community like say, whoa, Azuki's reaching out, you should do something collab. And I was like, all right, I feel like I'm, missing something. And then I did research and I looked into it, and it was a really well thought out, fleshed out project. So then we had a Twitter Spaces together. We ran a giveaway for some pre-sale access spots in my community. Zagabond actually ended up joining my 333 club. So then, I formed a pretty close bond with the project from that sense. And yeah, I thought it was really cool. I bought one on secondary pre-reveal, and I minted one from the mint lists, and I still have the two. And obviously, am grateful, but also feeling infinite regret at not buying more because they sat at between 2 and 3 ETH for maybe a week, and now they're at close to 10, and it looked awesome to me. Like the project had all the check marks, but I guess my thinking was, oh, I'll just wait for the next bear market and then I'll buy in. Similar to how Doodles but comparing every project, you can't compare to previous cycles and hope the same thing's going to happen. I think the market has matured and legitimate projects are much more quickly running up and having their value realized. And yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to hear you mention like, oh, I'll wait for it to go down. I don't know if that's, I'm feeling that right now where I'm looking at projects that I'm interested in, but I'm like, oh, it's a bull market. Like I don't want to buy during a bull market. And of course it makes me regret that I didn't buy more during the bear market, which, when we were in this bear phase last year, I was so aware of it. I was like, now is the time to buy. But it is so hard to get yourself to buy when prices are just going down. Like it just feels so bad to buy when things are down, even though that I know rationally that's the thing to do. And like I'm looking at projects now, I'm like, oh, but prices are pumping. Like I shouldn't buy now. I should wait and tag this project and wait until the next bear market and then buy in, even if it's months from now.
I have like this ever-growing list of projects that I'm like, in the bear market, I want to buy. But you're right, during the bear market, it's like, I think many of us agree that sort of most projects are going to go to zero. So my thinking was that, okay, we're in a bear market. Maybe this is the end for most projects. The blue chips are going to survive. They'll be fine. But all these projects that have gone from 0.5, 1 ETH down to, in some cases, under 0.1, maybe they're just not going to make it. And missed opportunities everywhere.
Totally. Exactly. And it's hard for the human brain to like conceptualize a different reality than the one it's living in, you know? So
Yeah.
it's just so easy to be like, this is what's going to last forever. Like this is the new normal, right? Which is why you want to buy when everything's pumping and doing well, and you want to not buy when everything's doing poorly. And of course it's an ineffective strategy. For anybody who, I apologize if you're getting background noise here and our editors couldn't fix it. There's a protest outside my apartment that's been going on for 3 hours. I can't do anything about it. We're just powering through here. So, okay, you said Azuki checked all the boxes. I actually would love to hear from you why you were initially drawn to it. And I'll say the reason for that is I was totally late to this project. I heard about it once it hit like 7 ETH. You know, like I completely missed this. And I was looking at it, you know, and then I started deep diving on it. And I'm like, look, this does look super cool. The website's slick. But I was like, would I have called this out, like would I have recognized this for a really good project if I didn't already know that it was doing well? And I'm trying to work on better honing my sort of recognition skills around that. So I would love to hear from you as somebody who did see it earlier on, like what you were like drawn to, why you were like, yes, this has got the ingredients. Let's fucking roll.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the art is immediately appealing. It's really, really well done and clean, and the website is great. I guess two things that drew me to it that made it stand out compared to most other projects is they were very explicit about
yes, I just put water on my head to fix my head.
Explicit about how they were building a brand, you know, not just a PFP project, not just a JPEG, not just their vision wasn't to release a community, a merch drop, a comic, a game. It was a brand, which I think the most successful projects are going to be brands. And that sort of level of self-realization and just transparency and upfrontness from them saying, hey, this is what we're doing and building, and we want it to be community-centric, built not just with the team, but, you know, with the community, was an important distinction. I haven't seen too many projects explicitly come out and say, hey, we're building a brand. And then the team, it's like, it's a really legit crew of people who have a lot of like IRL experience or like experience working. You know, they have the art designer from Overwatch, the massive game, and like they have people who've had success running businesses and things like that. It's a great team. It's a great idea. It's got great art, and perhaps something that's also helping it. It's like got the anime theme, which is sort of appealing to the Eastern and Western sensibilities, perhaps, which I think we spoke about last episode. Sort of there's a lot of money entering the space from the Asian markets, which may be a new catalyst in this current bull run. So all of those things combined, and then just chatting with and listening to Zagabond on Spaces, as well as hearing how other people spoke of him and the project. I think the consensus was that a lot of people looked up to him, respected him, believed in him and his vision and his ability to carry it out. All of those factors, now that I'm speaking them through, again, is making me regret not buying more. But yeah.
Well, there were a
regret.
couple of things that stood out to me. Infinite regret, man. But I want to ask one more question before I mention a couple things that I felt like stood out. Zagabond, do we know his background? That was the thing that didn't stand out. Was I felt like, yeah, the Overwatch artist was highlighted, and then they said, hey, you know, other team members worked for, you know, X big tech, X this, but I'm like, I'm just taking your word for it. Like, I couldn't find names, so I couldn't LinkedIn people. Like, is Zagabond's background sort of public, or is he sort of semi-anon?
I don't actually know. I think he might be semi-anon, but I don't want to really speak out of turn. I am showing my ignorance here. But I know that other team members have more of a like background where you can say that I'm just looking at the webpage now. One of them's formerly a PM at Google and just stuff like that, where it's they have real world experience that you can track. But yeah.
But that was, again, I saw that, but I'm like, he doesn't have a name. I can't fact check. You know what I mean? Like, anybody can put up a website and be like, I'm a PM at Google. So I think this is where there is an element, I think, to this space. And I mean, it all is sort of tying back to the Line Gazette video, but like where you do kind of have to be on the inside or have, you know, I think you met Zagabond, you talked to him in a Twitter Spaces, and yes, while in theory, anybody could have joined that Twitter space and heard from him firsthand. I don't know, I clearly wasn't on Twitter that day or whatever happened, you know, happened that I kind of missed who that person was. And then it becomes very hard to try and, I mean, I was trying to dig and find these folks, and it was like, when it's more than 10 minutes, you know, for me to try and figure out who the team is, that puts me off. So again, in my trying to think back to had I seen this project in its earlier stages, would I have recognized it for what it was? I would have recognized a very talented web page. I thought they have something called their mind maps. Instead of doing a roadmap, they have this thing like mind maps. And I think it's visually really well done the way they've put that together. And I think the concept of here's sort of what we stand for and doing that instead of a roadmap, I really like. So there's so much that I responded to, but I was like, fundamentally that not really being able to fact check some of their stories other than the Overwatch guy, I'm like, oh, I don't know. That would have made me nervous in those earlier days. But I will say on the positive, I thought they did something, I guess ERC 721A, they were calling it, where they basically made it so that they tweaked the smart contract and made some optimizations there that allowed minting many of them to basically be the same cost as minting one. That was really interesting to me. I hadn't seen that before. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or you know, kind of took note of that. But I always like when I see sort of technical innovation of that kind.
Yeah. We've sort of seen over the last few months a lot of projects come out with like tweaks to the ERC 721 standard contract to reduce gas costs. I think the most
Lizard
common
Lab, that's another one.
Yeah, that's a big one, Lizard
that did
Lab. Honestly, I mean, cryptocarbons, there's so many that did it and did interesting and new things. I think all of it was born out of the fact that gas in October just got absolutely insane and like projects couldn't survive. And to Lizard Lab's credit, they were doing it before that happened. But projects realized, hey, we need, like, no one's going to pay $200 in gas to mint a $100 NFT or whatever it might be. So yeah, innovation sort of spurred out of that, and people kept trying new and different things and a lot of tweaks on the same sort of type of thing. And Azuki sort of seemed to have packaged it all together nicely, added a couple of new things on their own, and yeah, it's great. I know CryptoCovens did something interesting where normally when you want to sell something on OpenSea, you have to pay like the first like a gas amount to be able to list things, and they sort of baked that into the initial contract, so you didn't have to pay that OpenSea fee and things like that. Like innovations that are just good for the end consumer and save us money, which don't really cost anything to anyone. It's good to see, and I think hopefully the ERC 721A standard becomes more common, more projects use it and build upon it.
This is going to tie me back to a point I want to make about this Line Goes Up video. I don't know why this video impacted me so much.
Yeah.
I guess because I spent 2 hours of my life watching it. So I was like, well, now it has to matter.
I just finished it as well before we recorded this. I had very fresh in mind. And yeah.
Yeah, I had to watch it in chunks. But I think that's another piece that frustrated me about it is he was very quick to criticize everything about this space and NFTs and crypto. And it felt like he was treating the way it is now as if it's the way it's always going to be. So if there are flaws to the systems as they are, that somehow, you know, it means it'll never work. And I look at what's happening with some of these optimizations, and it doesn't mean gas is solved or that this is like suddenly an accessible world if you don't have a lot of disposable income to get into. But we're only going to see more of this stuff, right? Like we're only going to see necessity is the mother of invention. There's enough money on the line here. Yeah. We're only going to see more innovating to make it more accessible, in my opinion. L2s are only going to become more accessible and, you know, function better with mainnet. Like all of this stuff is only going to get better. That's where I do feel like the we're so early point is so valid. Like we are so early in the ultimate evolution of this. And I've sometimes been I don't know, critical of the we're so early point because I think people use the we're so early to say all these prices are low, and that's not necessarily true. Like,
right,
we're not so early that everything is a steal. You know, there's a lot of projects that are actually probably quite overpriced and will go to nothing. And so don't conflate, you know, we're so early with everything I'm buying is going to go up eventually as more people enter the space. But do think of we're so early as the technical imperfections have a lot of time to be ironed out. And so as there are technical critiques levied at this, and I think I want to mention some of them that he talks about in this video, you know, some of which around like a lot of images are stored on IPFS, not actually on the blockchain. And you could, in theory, like just create another smart contract that points to that exact same IPFS storage unit and things like that. Who knows all the ways we can work out some of those kinks as time goes on. Okay, cool. Well, Azuki, I am now fully priced out of it. Sad to say, but perhaps down the line.
Come on,
bear market, bear market,
Yeah.
baby. I know. We'll see. Okay, I wanted to maybe call out a couple other projects. Woodies, I know, is a project that you're sort of interested in and think has some potential, and that caught my attention because John Rogers, who I had on the show a couple weeks ago, former Disney exec, worked with a ton of big franchise intellectual property. He also flagged Woodies as a project he's really keeping his eye on. I know he sees it as having a lot of potential in terms of, a series, a children's story. Like he feels like there's a story there that can be built out of that, those images and what they're doing. Would love to hear, what caught your attention about Woodies, why you like them. They've gone up and down a little bit, but they had sort of a pop, I think, actually after John Rogers came on the show, and then they went down a little bit, and then they've popped again a little bit recently. But they're still at like 0.3 ETH, like they're a somewhat
Quite
accessible
reasonable.
price point for folks. So would love to highlight them if you had thoughts you wanted to share.
Yeah, I saw them at Mint actually. I think it was Kevin Rose tweeted about them as they were going live, and I had just come back from a vacation actually, and it was like one of the first things I minted. I was like, hey, this looks cool. Let me mint a bunch of the mint passes. And then it was still in that stage of the bull market where you can like mint first, research later, which can only happen in bull markets. No one does that in bear markets, but I did that. And then as I started researching, I was like, hey, this is really cool. Like there's a lot of substance. The people working on it are great. The art looks really clean and kid-friendly, family-friendly, whimsical. It's got this whole nature forest element, which hadn't really seen in too many projects. And then as times went on, what really continued to hook me is sort of the world building, the story building, the lore that they've put into the project. And in the last couple of weeks, that's something that's been more and more front of mind to me, the importance of world building. I guess it all comes back to cryptocurrencies again. I talk about this project so much, but what they did was so great in that they have a tagline. They say "law, not flaw," which I think that they got from the Forgotten Runes Wizard Cult project. But it really is, focus on building out the world, the brand, the lore, the story, because that's what's gonna, we're humans. We like stories. That's what's gonna keep people emotionally attached and involved and want to be part of the journey, and create this universe that can down the line have all sorts of avenues for adding, finding, creating value for holders and the wider community and all that kind of stuff. But it sort of flips the script. Like a lot of projects launch PFPs and then price runs up and then they sort of add the lore and the story retroactively. Whereas I think the projects that are building that from the ground up and then not focusing on hype marketing and aggressive promotion and that kind of stuff, in the long run, they're going to be the most successful. And then you have projects that are doing both at the same time, obviously. But then you have that's like Bored Ape Yacht Club, Cool Cats, which obviously they're doing fine and great. So lore and story is what really hooked me for Woodies.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like I've actually been talking about this for a while. I remember thinking this, I don't know if I was saying it publicly, last year, probably in like September, October time, because you did post Bored Apes just have that huge run of just we still are seeing it, of course. It's just like copying that general model. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a really talented fantasy writer being like, you are what we need in NFTs right now. We have the artists. We have people creating incredible art projects. All of these projects are now promising that they're going to create, even if it's a game, that's still a story. Like all of these projects are promising something that requires a narrative and requires a world. And too few of these teams don't have somebody like that on the team, right? So they're going to be shopping for that. That's the gap. And so I think I have said it on the podcast. Like if you're a writer, if you know writers, and like it feels like there is such a, we're trying to have more projects start writing and being story first, but there's still such a need for writers and creatives in this space outside of just visual artists, because that's going to be the backbone of building long-term IP and brands is that world building, that story building. Very cool. This actually gets us into the sort of CC0 conversation that I really want to have, but I wanted to fly through. I just wanted to highlight TIMEPieces is doing a drop. I know you mentioned, Zeneca, you have a couple TIMEPieces, but I don't know if you've tracked sort of
I have no idea what
latest.
to do with them.
So I tried to mint a Genesis piece, and for folks who maybe weren't a part of that, gas went literally bananas. I think they ended up selling for
4 ETH.
It was like 0.1 ETH for one of these timepieces, and then I think they all ended up being like $15,000, like $11,000 to buy or something, just absolutely bananas because of the way gas worked. And so I did not end up with one, and it was sort of a blessing because they kind of crashed post reveal for, I don't know, reasons. I have thoughts. I think the art was not what people were expecting, but they have done, I think, a really impressive job of proving that they are here for the long term and that they are building a long-term NFT program. And they do these town halls on a very regular basis as in their Discord. Keith Grossman is clearly very engaged in the space. He's, I think, president of Time. And so what they did for folks who didn't end up getting the Genesis pieces, but who bid on something, they airdropped everyone who bid this, like, I think they're called cat passes. I don't know. It's a time cover from like 1986. So I basically have a mint pass for a future time drop. And they also did something that I thought was clever, which is you got that airdropped. And then in order to be able to mint a part of a future collection in like the pre-mint phase, you had to have that plus a POAP that you could only get from attending one of their town halls. So it totally worked for me. I've now attended town halls of theirs so that I can get the POAP after the fact. Yeah. And so now I'm qualified for this. This is their second time collection. They did a drop called Long Neck Woman. It was this 12-year-old artist. It got some attention at the time, but that wasn't one of their signature collection drops, I think. So I think this is their second signature drop. What they're doing here that is cool, and today, I should say, today's Thursday, the 27th. This is the first day that registration starts for folks who qualify for pre-mint in this drop, and it'll run through February 3rd. So whenever you're listening to this, you may still have time to go and register. But basically, this drop is going to be, it's called Slices of Time. And so the artwork you'll mint is like multiple time covers sliced together, essentially, in a particular era. And then what's extra is they've commissioned all these artists, including Colin, or better known as Klon, the artist for Cool Cats. Of course, Time and Cool Cats have this sort of ongoing partnership, have drawn time covers, either reimagining a past year or imagining a future year.
That's really cool.
You mint this initial Slices of Time NFT, and then you can choose whether or not you want to keep that or burn it and get a piece of art from one of these artists they've commissioned, one of these sort of reimagined time covers. There's some big name artists who have done these time covers. Some of their works sell for a lot of money. So of course there's a bet you're making, like if you get one of the big name artists, suddenly you'll have a really expensive NFT. I think they're doing a really good job as far as like major brands go in terms of getting into this space. I've been very impressed with how they've just been consistent and running things. And so I will be minting one of these Slices of Time NFTs, and we'll kind of make a determination at that point whether I want to burn it for one to take my chances on one of these other artists.
Nice. That's exciting. I tried that gas war as well. I failed. That's probably like my biggest gas war failure that I was bummed about. Not just because I missed out, but then I also FOMO'd in and bought them at like 3 or 4 ETH on secondary, and then they tanked. So I'm still holding them, and like they're like just a battle wound and a bad memory in my wallet. But I'm also like, the reason I bought was because I was so bullish on the project. I was like, Time magazine, and they're talking about these being lifetime things. They're going to have IRL events and like exclusive access, and they're going to be in the space for a long time. And they're doing stuff with Robotos, and is it Smiles? I think it might be Smiles. Maybe not. Don't quote me on that. And Keith Grossman is just like in a bunch of communities talking to people, and he's very much in the space. So I'm bullish on them, and
Polygon is Ethereum's largest and most vibrant scaling solution to date. With millions of monthly users and all of the biggest DeFi apps, the Polygon ecosystem has turned into a blossoming metropolis of DeFi activity. Transactions on Polygon are quick and cheap, allowing users the freedom to achieve their DeFi goals, all while being economically anchored to Ethereum. But Polygon isn't just the proof-of-stake sidechain. The Polygon team is building a suite of scaling solutions, including Polygon Hermes, Maiden, Nightfall, and Zero, all with different design choices in order to be optimized for all possible crypto use cases. If you're a developer who wants to build on the Polygon ecosystem, go to the link in the show notes to check out their fantastic documentation. And if you're a user who just wants to experience fast and cheap DeFi, you can bridge over your ETH or other tokens and start playing around with any of the thousands of applications that are available on Polygon. Unstoppable Domains is the #1 provider of NFT domains. With domains ending in .crypto, .x, or .nft, Unstoppable Domains lets you replace your long, complex wallet address with a human-readable address. Using Unstoppable, you can verify the ownership over your NFTs, log into Web3 apps, and join tens of thousands of people using them as their Twitter usernames. With Unstoppable Domains, you can have all of your crypto addresses registered to one single domain. So it doesn't matter where crypto payments are coming from or where they're going. By registering all of your crypto addresses to your Unstoppable domain, all of that is taken care of in the back end. Better yet, with Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about gas costs or renewal fees because you own it. Buy your domain and you can show it off as your new Twitter username. So you can get your name for as low as $5 at unstoppabledomains.com.
My only question before we go to CCO was do you have a price prediction for Cool Cats Pets? They come out tomorrow. By the time people are listening to this, it will be happening or already happened probably.
I think they're coming out.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, they delayed it by 2 or 3 days. I think 30th or 31st is now when they're coming out. Yeah.
So now like probably Sunday or Monday. Okay. Well, what's your price prediction?
Yeah. So mint price is 0.5. I think people were unhappy about that, and I made I think a tweet memeing the Sam Bankman-Friedman thing. Like, I will buy all your Cool Cat Pets at 0.75, et cetera, et cetera. I think 2 to 3 ETH is probably what I think that they'll be going for. Yeah, because Cool Cat's around 15 ETH at the moment. That seems about right to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what my guess was too. Do you think they're a good buy at 2 or 3 ETH? Would you buy them if you weren't going to be able to mint them, which I know you will be able to? Would you buy at 2 or 3 ETH?
I'll definitely buy at 2. 3, I'll be a little more reluctant. But yeah, it sounds like. Yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider is that 10,000 Cool Cat owners are getting one for free as well, so they may be wanting to. There'll be a lot of sell pressure, I think, especially for holders of Cool Cats who have held from 0.02 or 0.03 or whatever, and not taken any profits. Now it's all of a sudden sort of like with the Kennel Club for the dogs.
Kennel Club.
When that came out, there's a lot of hype, price went up, and then a lot of people were taking profits, and they actually dropped below 1 ETH for a while, and obviously now they're doing great. So yeah, I'll probably buy around the 2 ETH mark. It also depends on the game, and there's so many interesting elements that are coming out with this whole thing, which looks really cool, and there's a ton of thought put into it. I'm very bullish on it. So maybe I'll be buying it 2, maybe 3 ETH, and definitely below.
Yeah. I would love to join the Cool Cats ecosystem. Again, it's so hard for me to pull the trigger, honestly, above an ETH, but this would be one I would maybe make an exception for, just because I am pretty bullish on Cool Cats and would like to be able to get into that universe. I did last week on the podcast. I talked about this a little bit and was doing the price comparison of Kennel Club. I think, I think they're at 5 ETH right now or something, which if you compare that to the price of a Bored Ape, it's actually really tiny, it's like it's 0.7% or whatever, 7%, I guess, of the price of
the Kennel Club.
Oh, oh my God, they've gone up 2 ETH in a week. God, this market is crazy.
It's so crazy.
It's up $5,000 since last Friday. But as a percentage of mutant apes, it's about 1/3 of a mutant ape. Again, I guess higher probably now, whatever it is. But the pets obviously have this gamified component. They have this quests component. They have the sort of almost Tamagotchi feel. You're not trying to keep it alive, but you're you're kind of impacting its life cycle. So that adds something that the Kennel Club obviously doesn't have. Okay, let's talk about CCO. I've talked about this a bit on the podcast. I know I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would say you are somebody who I admire because you also call attention to CCO, and you definitely call attention to CCO projects. And you've talked about flip maps, and you talk about MFers and blip maps, flip maps being the sort of approved derivative project of flip maps. So that I think that comes across as being quite bullish on CCO, which I think you are, but I don't want to overstate your bullishness. I would just love to get your thoughts on, why you're bullish, what you like about it, and maybe we go back and forth on that a little bit, because I am too, but maybe a little bit more reservedly than you are.
I think the beauty of it is just sort of, I guess for people who don't know, CCO is Creative Commons license, basically, where there's no rights reserved for the creator of whatever it is. So there's basically no copyright. Someone creates a piece of art or work, and then anyone can go and do whatever they want with it. And historically, it's been things like Romeo and Juliet is a piece of artwork, or not artwork, a play by Shakespeare, and it's in the Creative Commons now because usually copyright's held for like 50, 70, 100 years, can be extended if people are still alive, but eventually it goes out into the public domain and anyone can create whatever they want from it. And now we're seeing some NFT projects come out and either launch with being CC0 from the beginning, or after a little while can like say, hey, all of our stuff's now CC0, which opens it up to anyone out there that wants to create a derivative or expand on the universe and build on the brand and profit off it and create create a derivative that they can monetize. They can do it. And there's no recourse for the creators. No one can sue them. There's no, if like OpenSea is not going to take them down, there's no sketchy areas. And I think that adds so much freedom and unlocks creativity and really harnesses the true composability nature of the blockchain, where it's like you take previous things and build upon it. And to me, A, it's great for creators who want to use the work to create whatever they want. And B, generally speaking, it's going to add value to the originals. So I think it's sort of a win there as well. If you have the original, let's say if there was an NFT of the Excalibur sword, if you owned that, there's now been millions of derivatives created and like an entire world and lore, and there's movies about it. It's a valuable thing because of all these derivatives. And I think that is sort of an extreme example, but let's say we go down the line in a few years, a lot of these CC0 projects, I think, are going to be very valuable because there's been an entire universe story built upon it, and because creators have felt the freedom to be able to build upon this world in a way that they may, like, no one's building on top of CryptoPunks, obviously, because, I mean, they have some of the worst copyright restrictions. But even Bored Apes, there aren't people who aren't Bored Ape owners or in the Bored Ape ecosystem who are really adding value and building on top of it, because there's little incentive there. Sure, they can go to an ape owner and ask if they can use their ape and do all that kind of stuff, but I think if it was CC0 and public domain, there would be more stuff built. Now, obviously, the trade-off is that when it comes to building a brand, a lot of the times you want to have more focus and like structure around building it in a certain direction. I think Cool Cats is the example I always give. They're very concentrated and concerned about being family-friendly, child-friendly, playful, cute, etc. I mean, there was a project I was advising on who wanted to collab with Cool Cats, and they reached out and started talking, and then Cool Cats noticed that one of the traits in their project was a gun, and they said, we're not going to associate with any project that has a gun trait. The Littles is another project which they actually had to change their name to The Littles because their original name wasn't something that Cool Cats wanted to be associated with. I don't actually know what the original name was, but that's sort of like the extent to which Cool Cats is protecting their brand, and they couldn't do that if Cool Cats were CC0 in public domain, because then anyone could create anything, and they couldn't say, hey, no, we don't want that. That's not in line with our vision. So I think there's an argument to be made against CC0 in public domain, but to me, I think the end goal of everything being public domain is ideal, and I can see a situation where like the best solution for a lot of projects is to begin with having rights reserved, but then say, in 5 years, we're gonna, we've put the wheels in motion, we've laid out what our vision is, we have a strong community, we've created a body of work, and then now we'll release it into the public domain and the community can do whatever they want.
Okay, I want to give my devil's advocate push against that. Not because I disagree with a whole bunch of that. I think CC0 and having these CC0 projects is fantastic and something we actually absolutely want in the ecosystem. But I think beyond even just, in some cases, wanting to protect a brand against, if you're Cool Cats and a gun and this and that, there's also an extent of sometimes you want to trust a single or particular team to build out the story world. So I'll give, VeeFriends as an example, right? Like I bought into that project because I have a tremendous amount of belief in Gary Vaynerchuk, and I think he's sort of a very rare talent. And he's been very open about the fact that he's building an animation studio and he's going to create storylines around these characters that are going to make them relevant in his vision on par with Disney and Mickey Mouse and all these characters. And I think were that a CC0 project and anybody could come along and create some alternative story, it dilutes and it now competes with him creating a very specific set of stories. The other example I think I've given him before, because it came up in the conversation with Deadheads, which is a project that is not CC0, but I think is doing a really interesting in-between version of rights, is they're like, you know, what if you owned the future R2-D2, or you say that with the Excalibur sword, or these things, right? Well, if Star Wars had been CC0 from the very beginning, and like 800 different storylines had emerged, and there was no kind of cohesive, you know, like, and it was up to the community for somebody to create the Star Wars vision. Well, R2-D2 might not matter because it didn't have that central George Lucas unbelievable visionary to make it something absolutely incredible for it to then be relevant. And my concern with this is, and Bored Apes isn't CC0, but, you know, Bored Apes does give you a lot of rights over your individual ape. Like, one ape is in the future and, you know, is an astronaut, and the other ape is, you know, under the sea. I mean, that might all be compatible if these are explorer apes. But my point being, there could be very incompatible storylines that sort of degrade the cohesion of like a massive Star Wars-esque brand. And so what I've been talking about, and folks who have listened to this show really religiously, or follow me really religiously, I guess, are probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but is I think it's about being really aware of what you're buying into with any given project, right? Like, and what the bet you're making is. So like, I do think that you'll have things like a Blitmaps or others where they're big enough, they're well known enough, they're kind of renowned enough that you'll have these amazing creatives who will latch onto that project and build something incredible out of it. But I think if every project was CC0, there's kind of a limited amount of like, you know, completely brilliant, gonna create the next Star Wars people out there. And so I don't know, I think that's where having a blend, and when we talk about like having a diversified portfolio, part of that to me is having a diversified set of sort of rights projects. Like maybe you want some CC0, so you're making bets there, you're making bets on certain specific teams, like a Gary Vaynerchuk. That's my perspective on it, is that there are also benefits to teams who have a really specific vision. You're mentioning that with Cool Cats, going and taking it to its full potential. So there's even a chance for the R2-D2 to really emerge. I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think, though, that with CC0, you can sort of still have your cake and eat it too. Like, Blitmaps, I'm not a huge fan of it because it's CC0. I'm a huge fan of it because it's founded and directed basically by Dom Hoffman. He's a genius. He's creating this universe. He has a vision for it. I'm buying into that. And I think he's going to, like, just because it's CC0, it's not like he's saying, all right, it's CC0 done. Now community, go do your thing. He still has a very strong vision for the brand. But if a community member wants to create some offshoot derivative flip maps, which I think is brilliant, great. They have that power and ability and freedom to do so. So I think, yeah, projects that are CC0 and just launch and say, hey, we put some out there, now you community do your stuff. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of them. They're unlikely to go on and become amazing things. But projects that have a strong team, vision, and are building a brand and universe and story, and saying, you know, if you want to go out and add to it, and it can be whatever you want. Like, it can be, you know, Blit maps under the water and in space, whatever. It's like, you know, people create fan art for, you know, fan stories, fan fiction for every universe out there. Like, you can already go and read stories about whatever, Star Wars in the 1960s, like whatever, cowboy Star Wars. I'm sure there's anything you can imagine people have ideas for and want to create and add to the universe. And I think it does just add to that universe. And I think if it's sort of condoned, supported by the team and the people who first had the idea, the end result is just a more expansive, fleshed out universe where there is still sort of like this central theme and story that the team who created the project, founded it, has a vision, is building. Most people are going to rally behind that and say that's, you can call it the official storyline or the main storyline. And then there's all these arcs that people continue to build off. But I mean, I think the Blitmap universe is going to be huge, enormous, this sci-fi, fantasy, brilliant story because of the team. And like, it's CC0, it doesn't mean it's not going to have all these elements as well.
All right. I hear that. And I guess this gets to like, you know, provenance on the blockchain or whatever, right? Like, you can still have that element of like, here's the official team's sort of work, right? And because to your point, there is fan fiction with all of these major franchises, right? It's just a matter of, you know, can they be legally persecuted or not, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be very curious. Tweet at us. Let us know your thoughts. You know, I think this is an ongoing debate that's going to be had in this space for a while. I still like the idea of having a variety. And I think there's also an element here, which is something I've been meaning to dive deeper into, which is this sort of distinction between copyright and trademark, right? Which is, and this is something Deadheads is doing. I don't know, this may be true for Blip Maps, for example, where it's like, you can go and take this art or but that doesn't mean you can use the name, right? For Deadheads, you can go and take those characters and do what you want with them, but you can't call it Deadheads. You can't say it's still a part. So you can still have distinctions like that, I think, with CC0 that protect sort of the name of your particular story and lore.
Yeah, that's how and just allows works. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense then. Okay, TreasureDAO. You want to say your impression or thoughts on TreasureDAO?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by it. I think it is magical to, I mean, the native token's called Magic. It's a really cool, interesting project. It was sort of inspired by, derived off of Loot, again, another Dom Hoffman project.
Speaking of Dom Hoffman.
Yeah, so it's basically an ecosystem on the layer 2 Arbitrum network, where they're creating a marketplace and now this whole DeFi universe where, it's very gamified DeFi plus add in an NFT, like decentralized marketplace into the mix on a layer 2. It's got a lot of moving parts and elements, and I have not taken the time and I'm probably not smart enough to really understand all of it. Like it's really intricate. The white paper is in-depth and detailed.
It's 43 pages long. I was like, oh, I'm going to read it before the episode, Zeneca. And then woke up this morning and was like, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah. Everything I've read about it seems great. And all of the smartest people I know love it. And that's sort of like something that, if I don't have the time to research something, but my smart friends say it's worth researching and other smart people say it's worth researching and looking into, I sometimes just take a leap of faith. And yeah, so I bought into a bunch of it. It seems cool. They launched their game or their Bridge World a few days ago. Yeah.
And when you bought in, did you buy in just to Magic, the currency, or did you buy like there's Legions and I forget some of the other, there's like their kind of core NFTs. Did you buy into those as well?
I did both. Actually, I was in the Chain Runners Discord, another CC0 project, shout out to them, and I was trying to figure it out, and I asked them, what should I get? And someone said, the Chad starter pack is 2 small brains, 2 small bodies, land, a Seed of Life, and a Legion Genesis. And so that's what I got. And I was like, all right, cool. Because I was like, I didn't have the time to figure it out. So I was like, someone tell me what to buy. What do I need? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And that was it, yeah.
When was this? When did you buy in?
So relatively late, I'd say like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I'd been hearing about it for months, and I own Loot, and you could have staked the Loot to get the Magic tokens. And again, just too many projects, not staying on top of them, so I missed that. But I got in about 3 weeks ago.
The bullish case that I've been hearing, or like this vision that I've heard that I thought was compelling, I guess people have been comparing it to like Nintendo. They're like, this is going to be the Web3 Nintendo. And the argument there is that what Nintendo has is obviously massive distribution. So other gaming platforms, or other games, I should say, want to launch on Nintendo, even though Nintendo will take, a 30% cut of anything your game does, because Nintendo has the distribution. And that, I guess the argument here is if Bridge World sort of fulfills its greatest potential, and they have this really amazing game and an ecosystem that is drawing a lot of people in, Magic, then you will have other games that will pitch TreasureDAO. Yeah. TreasureDAO runs this Bridge World game, right? We'll pitch TreasureDAO. TreasureDAO will say, okay, great, you can come sort of be a part of our ecosystem. Magic has to now be the native currency for your game as well, and by TreasureDAO having the distribution, because there's enough people within their network, it's going to draw other awesome games to it. So this sort of like layer 0 metaverse where like there's this sort of interoperable gaming world where other games want to come and be on TreasureDAO. So that's a very compelling vision. I'm like, again, I'm late on this, but it, Eric Connor mentioned it in a panel we were both a part of earlier this week. And, for weeks I have been hearing about it. And so interesting. I mean, Magic's at like $4, which is, I think, high obviously for just a currency, but also still accessible if you think this is ultimately going to be like Web3 Nintendo.
It dipped to, I think, 97 cents like 2 or 3 days ago. So what happened was a lot of people had a ton of Magic staked and locked up, like vested basically from really early on, and it all unlocked, I think, on the 24th. And yeah, like people were like, are they going to dump, and is it just going to like crash the market? But it got eaten up real quick.
Yeah. I think there were a lot of people aware that unlock was happening, and so we're holding off buying it to see what happened with the unlock. And then when the price tanked, all these people who had been waiting to get in just pounced.
I was one of those people, and then I just got lazy and didn't actually buy in. So regrets.
Oh God, infinite regret. Okay, 5 minutes. Let's just mention. Oh wait, I want to say this. I want to show your YouTube channel launched today. It's Thursday, so if you're listening to this on Friday, it'll be 2 days old. I'm really excited about this, and I love, as always with your marketing, it's like it's like anti-marketing. Like when you launched your Zen Academy project, you were like, don't buy, like look, no exact. I'm not promising you anything. We're gonna have a Discord channel, and I'll advise you on your projects. Like that's what this is. Don't. And I love that, and it's such a mark of your, testament to you and your power that we all just still buy your stuff. And by the way, I'm in your Discord and it's great. And it's totally worth, I think, the 0.2 ETH that the pass now is. But your YouTube channel is the same thing. You're like, there's going to be no like sexy, titles or I'm not going to tell you how to get rich quick or 100x your value. It's just like me sitting there talking to project founders.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole concept is these long form interviews with project founders. And I think because that's something that I have access to, and I spend most of my days talking to project founders, and I hear about so many interesting projects and in so much more detail than anyone gets looking at them on Twitter or even reading their website or white paper. So I thought, hey, it would be great YouTube content. And yeah, it's going to start there. I might do some more general things like guides, how to use like gas wars and all that kind of stuff, because people always ask me for questions about that. But yeah, it's very low production value. It's me like this with a white wall behind me and them on webcam and just having a conversation, basically.
I'm excited. I have not watched the first episode yet, but I saw it. It's doing well. Lots of great positive YouTube comments. I opened the tab today so I can remember to watch later. But welcome to the YouTube game. I know you've been in the podcast game for a little while now, but now you're in the YouTube video
exciting.
Game. Okay, line goes up. I'll set the stage here quickly and then want to get your thoughts. I know you did a long tweet thread about this. I don't know if this has been really making the rounds a ton in NFT circles, but I have a lot of normie friends and I feel like I feel like a ton of them sent this to me. So I was sort of very aware of it. And I think it's something that among kind of the NFT skeptic crowd, people who are very aware of NFTs, but maybe love to hate them, this video was getting a lot of traction. And it basically is 2 hours. And it starts with, hey, here's how the 2008 financial crisis worked, which is basically we financialized mortgage-backed securities by bundling them together and then making them assets that we would sell, and that created a bubble. And by we, I mean Wall Street. People probably know how that worked. And then it starts there, and then it goes through sort of crypto and NFTs, and kind of circles back around by saying by financializing everything in the economy, which is what crypto and NFTs are aiming to do in his view, you're just going to create further and further like bubbles a la what we did with mortgages, and it's just going to crash. And he's just cynical about every aspect of this. And I thought I thought there were a lot of good points, and because there were a lot of good points, that's why I think it's worth engaging honestly with some of the fair criticisms, but also rebutting it a little bit. Setting the stage, Zeneca, why don't you give your thoughts and reactions to the video?
Yeah, so I literally just finished watching it. I think if someone who is skeptical about NFTs watches it, it'll like reaffirm everything that they already thought and basically convince them that they were right. I think anyone who's into the NFT space is not really going to be convinced by anything of it. So I don't really think that the outcome is going to change too much. I think he makes good points in the sense that he really does a great job of highlighting all the scams, all the fraud, all the like the rug pulls and the shady tactics that happens in the space, which is fair. There's a lot of that happens. There are a lot of crappy projects. 95%, 99% are going to go to zero, and people are going to lose a lot of money. And people should be aware of that and understand that it's a high risk environment. There's a lot of gambling that takes place and speculation, and it's worth highlighting. But he just neglects to mention anything remotely positive and sort of groups the entire NFT space in with all these scams and frauds and ignores the hard work and the building and creating that people are doing and the life-changing careers that many artists have had. I sort of, in my tweet thread, so something in the video he does is he joins Discord and then he gets a bunch of like spam DMs, we all get them, and he starts joining all the Discords, and like he goes through like a montage saying these are the projects, these are the scams. And I made an analogy, like if you were joining email in the 90s, you got so much scam and spam emails. If you clicked on every single one, you could make an equally compelling, oh look, email is bad montage. Doesn't mean email is bad. Doesn't mean the internet was bad. Doesn't mean NFTs are bad. I think there are bad actors. It's the Wild West. It's unregulated. It is dangerous. It is high risk. People should be aware, and most people should not participate and speculate at the moment. And it is expensive because of gas. Yeah.
Here are some of the big picture points that I wanted to maybe get your reaction to, because I think there's some legitimacy to them, and I don't really know how it's serving me at all to raise them, because I feel like I feel like it's only going to make people mad at me. But I think it's worth maybe calling out some of this, which is I felt like him talking about how the tech is still deeply imperfect. I think is fair. I think maybe not enough people really understand what's going on under the surface. I mentioned earlier, he calls out the fact that a lot of art actually isn't even on chain, right? It's on IPFS or on AWS. And so, it's a little bit, and this is something that Jim McNeilis talks about a lot. It's why he loves Avastars for what it is. Avastars is fully on chain. Like there's things about the tech that people don't really fully understand. Also, most artists are not going to make a lot of money. There's a lot of artists who maybe see the gold rush here or think there's a gold rush here, join quickly, spend a bunch of money on gas to mint this or that, and then nothing sells. And I wish we talked about that more for artists. Like, hey, this is not just because you get in this space, suddenly you're going to make a bunch of money on your art. I wish that were the case, but it's like any other industry. There's networking, that has to be done. Yeah. And that gets me to the final piece, which I wanted to get your reaction to. I know you have to go, so I appreciate you being so awesome.
No, it's fine. I got a couple minutes, yeah.
Which are, in some ways, this is an industry of just new gatekeepers. And I think there is this high-minded version of Web3, which, it's about decentralization, it's about community ownership. And I think there are moments where you see a lot of that. But there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens here. And it is, people who got in early to certain big projects end up being in the Discord chats that tell them about the new project that's cool to get into and get them on the whitelist spots for that. Like, it is a lot of work, I actually think, to fully break into this for the average person. And I think it's worth kind of acknowledging that as people are trying to get themselves into this space and maybe feel like they're failing or there's something wrong with them because they're not getting rich quick. Like, it's actually not, you see a lot of people who are making a lot of money on Twitter or on this and that, but like a lot of people aren't. And it's, I'm struggling. Like, I look at these projects and I'm overwhelmed by the volume and deciding which one's going to do well or not. And I'm in this every day and have been for months. And so there's still kind of a gatekeeper element to what we're doing. And I don't think that goes away. Like, humans create hierarchies. That's what we do. The problem isn't Web 2 technology. The problem is sort of like how humans work. Yeah. And I'll say I saw this on Scott Galloway is somebody I like, and he's sort of skeptical of Web 3 stuff. And he had a stat that I'm sure is a little bit off, but I think probably makes sense, which is that 9% of accounts own 80% of NFTs, and something like 2% of accounts own 85% of Bitcoin. Like, this is still a very concentrated industry. Yeah. And I love being here. Like, I think it's beautiful. I want more people in here. I think there's a tremendous amount of wealth transfer that is happening, which is why I want women here. I want people of color here, because there's more wealth being transferred in this space or created in this space than in so many other industries. So if you're here, the odds that you do well are much higher than if you're in another industry. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still some of the same flaws. And I don't want people to feel down or bad when they feel like they're not succeeding immediately. So that some of that stuff that I think he called out, I'm like, that's really valid. Like, I think there was a lot that was really valid about that.
Yeah. I'm reminded of, I'm going to paraphrase Winston Churchill quote and say that Web3, blockchain, NFTs, and crypto, it's like the worst system except for every other system.
Yeah, barring every other system. The capitalism argument. Capitalism is the worst system, barring all else. I think that's where I fall too. And I think that was sort of my fundamental takeaway. I love your email scam comparison. Was like, every new technology brings with it a whole bunch of bullshit. Right. And he calls out the environmental impact of NFTs and all this stuff. And I'm like, we should never have had cars and trains then. Like, everything you've done, you do as human beings is going to have drawbacks. New technology are going to have drawbacks. I've said this to friends who have maybe been like displeased with, oh, great, Web3 just introduces another way to socially signal. I already hate being on social media, whatever. Like, okay, but if you were given a magic wand, would you eliminate social media? Would you say it never been invented? Like, it's really easy to call out all its flaws, and there's so many of them. But fundamentally, do you wish it didn't exist? Like, there's always going to be problems this stuff is going to usher in. But that doesn't mean that we don't keep striving for progress.
Yeah.
So my takeaway, I actually do recommend people, I don't know if you have 2 hours to check it out. Personally, I think
it's worth watching at least
well
to understand how others are going to perceive the NFT space and crypto space. You know?
Totally. Know thy enemy.
Yeah.
Better than you know thy friends. Keep your enemies close.
Although we shouldn't think of them as enemies either, I think.
Of course. Thank you. That's, of course not. Yes, agreed. Definitely not enemies. People who are just future adopters. We'll all own NFTs someday, to be honest. So
yeah.
And I understand. We're also like, I understand why we as a community annoy people.
Absolutely.
We're fucking annoying.
Yeah. 100%.
Cool. Okay. Well, Zeneca, thank you. This has been a moment of Zeneca. And we will see you in a couple weeks. Such a pleasure as always.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.